Yesterday, we talked about the pan European destroyer Katsanis and the buff it received in the July 2026 update. Well, today, I've got a look at the pan European destroyer Holland, which also received a buff in this update. It wasn't as much of a crazy buff, I think, as the Katsanis received, but it does follow a recent buff that Holland got, maybe a few patches ago. It didn't always have the radar consumable, but a while back, Wargaming added radar to Holland. You can choose it in place of the repair party. And it's a 7.5 km radar with a 20-second duration, so pretty powerful. But according to the Ministry of Balance, the original Pan European destroyer line lacked survivability, so they buffed Holland's HP from 19,200 to 20,500, reduced the torpedo reload time from 100 to 85 seconds, and then added an engine boost. But not just any engine boost, a special engine boost, and probably the most powerful in the game next to Smolensk. It provides a 30% speed buff, and it lasts for 66 seconds, which is actually, I think, quite a long time for a speed buff that significant. Of course, the Holland is one of the original pan-European destroyers, and it's more focused on being, I suppose, a torpedo boat line, but that doesn't mean it doesn't have good guns, and we probably should have shot those guns earlier. I just thought the Z-44 would be going dark inside of his smoke screen and not continuing to spot us. He did, and we lost some HP. And, well, there he goes, first blood. However, we left it a little bit too late. Shouldn't have just been sitting there. We do take a torpedo from that Z, whatever that was, Z-23, Z-44. Hurts a lot. We lose more than half of our HP. And I'll tell you, once we get to the end of this battle, I don't think it would have been possible pre-buff for the Holland. The survivability buff did indeed work. And this game, by the way, when I was playing it, I was a little bit frustrated with the proceedings. You'll see what I mean as the situation develops here, but as you can tell, we've won the engagement against the enemy destroyer that was originally trying to take the Bravo cap. You see his sinking carcass right there. And we're going to end up flipping the Bravo cap because all we've got are a couple battleships hanging around outside of it, and they don't seem too eager to push in. Musashi is moving for his part, but of course we're going to launch torpedoes in that direction. I don't think we're actually going to hit any torpedoes until a little later on in this battle, but these torpedoes are going to come in clutch, at least at one point. Anyway, we flipped the Bravo cap, getting the solo cap ribbon for ourselves. We've got teammates in Alpha, and we've got a battleship pushing into Charlie. So I thought, well, work here is done. Last known location of the final enemy destroyer was near the Charlie cap. I think he was sailing away from it, but he's really got no opposition there except for that battleship inside of it. So I figured probably he's going to turn around and head back to Charlie. So we're also going to head that way, but here comes Rhode Island around the corner with no HP. And, well, maybe we ought to pause here for a second, keep him spotted, and potentially try to torpedo him, since he's such a dangerous battleship with his radar. In fact, he could use it right now and probably cause us to sink. As for those torpedoes that we launched earlier, yeah, they miss everything. Speaking of which, the torpedoes with their speed or their reload buff, we should, I suppose, talk a little bit about those, because this is supposed to be the centerpiece of the Holland, more so than the main battery guns. And these torpedoes have a range of 15 kilometers, they travel at 86 knots in the water, and they now reload in 85 seconds. So that is quite a quick cooldown. Main battery guns on Holland, which you saw earlier, it's not like they're bad, of course. They have an 11.9 kilometer range, there are only 4 of them. They are 120 millimeter guns in size, which is a little bit smaller for, the usual destroyer size guns. But they reload in 1.5 seconds with the reload mod. And the HE damage is 1750 with an 8% fire chance, 20 millimeters of pen. So, they're good at taking out destroyers. And of course, with Swirsky at the helm, our concealment's pretty good too at 5.4. And, well, I guess we are going to go back into the Bravo cap for the moment. I think originally we were going to go to Charlie, but since the Shimakaze was last spotted between Bravo and Charlie, well, we know he hasn't necessarily gone back in that direction, and there he is. Now, you might be wondering, why are we not shooting at the Shimakaze while he's spotted? Well, that's because there is a Musashi over there. There's also an Incomparable over here who will have shots on us. And there's a third battleship, I believe a Lepanto, somewhere to the right-hand side of our ship, or the starboard side. He's off screen, but if we shot our main battery guns and got spotted in between 2-3 battleships and that Shimakaze, well, we only have 9,414 HP left, and that would be the end of us. Speaking of which, the reason that our HP started out at 24,100, even though the buff was to 20,500, was because of the commander build. William Sims is one of the inspirations, and I do have Sims, I believe, fully maxed at rank 16, legendary level 4. We get some torpedoes there on the Incomparable, by the way. Not too bad, but these torpedoes don't exactly hit hard. They are very fast, but I don't think they're going to dev strike anything unless you land, like, all of them. Even something like the Incomparable, which doesn't have good torpedo damage reduction to begin with. Anyway, the reason the Holland's HP is higher is because, of course, Sims buffs the HP by 400 hit points per tier. So 400 times 9, technically legendary tier, you could say it's tier 9. That's 3,600 extra HP. That takes us to 24,100. And I should point out, too, that if we were using the same build on pre-buff Holland, with the original base HP value of 19,200, we would be at 22,800. And the difference between 22.8k and 24.1k, well, you know, it's a couple thousand hit points plus a couple hundred, I guess, right? So it's not that big of a jump, just in terms of raw numbers, but that much extra HP really could be the difference between a destroyer being sent back to port and continuing to exist in the match. Speaking of being sent back to port, 4 members of the blue team have been sent back to port versus only 2 of the reds. One of the members of the blue team is furiously pinging for my support, but what am I supposed to do really in this situation? I'm trying to sort of sit out here and spot the battleships in the center. There are 2 of them, maybe 3. One of them is sort of hanging out behind this rock. And eventually we would move out of this area and probably toward the Charlie cap, because all we've got is 1 cruiser on the Alpha side versus 2. So, you know, I'm reasonably certain that our 2 teammates over there are going to be able to handle that cruiser, but meanwhile, every other battleship is heading toward the Bravo Charlie side of the map. So we're finally going to exit Bravo and head over to Charlie as the Schlieffen starts pushing in. And maybe we'll shore up some support for the friendly battleship squaring off against the mostly dead Incomparable. After all, the Shimakaze is probably lurking around somewhere too. Speaking of torpedoes and torpedo boats, we get another kill on, I can't remember what that was. I think it was the Musashi pushing from the Bravo area toward Charlie. So we help out that friendly battleship, I suppose, in a way, by eliminating the next threat that was going to come around that rock. He takes out the Incomparable, and now we've brought the kill count down to parity. It's an even 4v4. But I will say this phenomenon is pretty common in World of Warships Legends. When you take all 3 of the capture circles, you don't need to continue pushing into the enemy team. I know that seems obvious, but if you've secured the win conditions and the enemy team is playing far back, all you do by pushing into them is give them the advantage to sink you. And if they sink enough of you, they can win the game, obviously. Shimakaze, he's coming forward to sink our friendly battleship, and that's not going to be good for him because we've got, well, actually, you know what? We accidentally used our radar earlier. Forgot to point that out. Incomparable spotted me in the Bravo cap because I got too close. I thought it was Shima for 1 wild second, wasted the radar, and now we don't have it. And almost, we're in a scenario where we could get hit by torpedoes again, just like we did in the beginning of the match. Of course, this time it would be totally lethal. So we have to make sure to dodge, and it's not all that difficult. Shimakaze torpedoes, I think, are some of the most dodgeable in the game. And I know some of you who will hear that will think I'm insane, but the reason I say that is because they have a 1.7 kilometer detectability by sea. You spot them at nearly 2 kilometers, maybe even in excess of 2 kilometers. But our torpedoes, well, they're much faster and probably more difficult to dodge. We take out the Shimakaze with one of them. But yeah, when you see Shimakaze torpedoes coming from nearly 2 kilometers and you know the direction they're coming from, and you're in a more maneuverable ship like a destroyer, yeah, they are very easy to dodge. That's our third kill of the game. We only have 80,000 damage done, but we're in a bad scenario here. We're going to try to use the engine boost to get away because we knew Schlieffen was coming around the corner. But he still comes around the corner, and we're probably thinking right now, oh no, we're going back to port, but hopefully we've won the game. Well, not quite. We do get a fire on the Schlieffen, and then we see Salem is on such low HP that we know we could finish him off. It's unfortunate that we didn't get the kill on Schlieffen, but the friendly battleship that we helped with the Shimakaze helps us out, and we get the kill on the Salem to end the game. So, you know, had we gotten a little bit luckier there, and also gotten the kill on the Schlieffen, that would have been a Kraken. But no, 84,000 damage done, not exactly a huge number, but 31,000 or 3,154 base XP. And this battle would have been impossible. We ended with only 847 HP, and pre-buff, we would have been sunk before we reached that point. So, what I can tell you is that the survivability buff on Holland is useful, and this is a very good destroyer, at least for winning games. So, hope you enjoyed the video. If so, give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.